Hi, welcome to Box on the Box, Rock and Celluloid, Bok for short. I'm Edward Box. So today I'm just going to talk about the latest James Bond news. So a couple of things flagged up on my YouTube, a couple of the big Bond fans, Bond channels I subscribe to, had mentioned about this. So there's an article in the Wall Street Journal, I believe, yesterday about why the major stalemate that has afflicted James Bond. As you may know, No Time to Die came out after its postponement at the end of 2021, so it's now been 3 years since any James Bond film, since any casting and so forth. This is a long time. I mean, it took 4 years after Pierce Brosnan had finished to Daniel Craig releasing him as Bond in Casino Royale. So it's not uncommon for it to take a while. In the days of Cubby Broccoli, it was always a Bond film every 2 years. Every year initially, then it went to every 2 years from Diamonds Are Forever onwards, apart from Man with the Golden Gun, and then there was actually a 2.5 year gap to 3 year gap between that and The Spy Love Me. So they tended to churn them out. So this length of time is not particularly massively concerning, but it is. It does feel like it's quite long. And remember, No Time to Die was actually supposed to come out in April 2020, and that was nearly 5 years after Spectre, certainly 4.5 years. So there's been a big gap there. So by now they could have picked a Bond. So it appears there a clash between them and Amazon. Now, basically, the Broccolis, Michael G. Wilson, Barbara Broccoli, kind of had a team up with Amazon. Because Amazon bought MGM Studios, which holds a right to Bond, or the MGM brand, for about 6.5 billion. MGM's had problems for years. It failed to produce any franchises, and its golden goose, its one thing it had was the Bond films. And obviously Amazon wanted a piece of that and other things, these internet giants kind of hoover things up. But the big problem, it appears, is that Amazon are a digital company, they're content creators, and James Bond is a cinematic property. And what Barbara Broccoli, and particularly Michael G. Wilson, bothered about is that Amazon will want to and seem to be pushing to kind of expand the Bond universe on Amazon Prime. And if we look at what happens with Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, certainly the case with Star Wars, it is completely dissolved and devalued that cinematic experience. And there's a lot of people that really don't give a shit about Star Wars now, myself included. I was never a huge Star Wars fan. I was a Bond fan back when I was a kid, but I've always enjoyed the Star Wars things. Particularly, I've got lots of friends who love it. And although as good as something like The Mandalorian is, it just dilutes it. James Bond, they've always resisted doing like a TV show or anything. Now there was the thing with Brian Cox, the Bond Chance in a Million thing, which was kind of seemed like a cross between, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and Race Around the World. Apparently it did alright, but Bond fans weren't into it. In the past, there's been talks of spin-offs for Bond. I think, let's do a Jinx spin-off. If you remember, Halle Berry was quite hot property at that time. There was chat about that, but Bond's always been exclusively just a cinematic property. There's been no spin-offs, and the only time there has been a Casino Royale, a comedy thing to do with the rights, and of course Never Say Never Again, which is a reworking of Thunderball, and that was to do with Kevin McClory having the rights to that. And neither of those are good. The Eon films can be patchy, they have their problems, but they have specific stylistic qualities that make it's a Bond film. And for a long time with the family entertainment, they got people to the cinema who didn't go to the cinema that regularly. Mum, dad, granddad. Oh, there's a James Bond film at the cinema. Oh, it's Christmas Day. This is going back into the 1970s and 80s. The Bond premiere on Christmas Day, Boxing Day, was a staple of British culture. I feel very lucky to experience that. So something like Amazon, apparently Barbara Broccoli's called one of their people, called them fucking idiots, whether that's to the face. I read something that the execs he's had the meeting with, who they're liaising with, is level 6 and the top guy's level 12. Now, me personally, I think James Bond is a precious thing, and I think the top guy, an Amazon person, should be taking an interest in this and meeting with the Broccolis and seeing how they can shore this up. But the problem is as people have stated in other online YouTube pieces about this, and please check those out. Analyse That Mr. Bond is a really good one, and he gave me a lot of food for thought there. Is that they don't really understand that they're from a different world. It's like I'm a musician. It's like Spotify aren't people into music. Spotify wasn't created to go, oh, let's listen to all this music. It was a tech thing. What can we put in this tech thing that we can monetize? And like music, is a good thing. And Amazon's the same. They sell stuff online, books, CDs. It's like they just want to fill their content, as do Netflix. And there's a weird thing with the content world where you get some great stuff created, but then it gets forgotten about. A great example of that would be, not if it was a great film, was Coda, the Oscar-winning film from Apple that no one's seen because it's on Apple and everyone's forgotten about. I only watched it recently. Normally I see the Oscar-winning film Best Picture as soon as I can, or before it's even awarded Best Picture. So there's that thing, No Time to Die as well. The Broccolis, Michael G. Wilson, Barbara Michael, they were like, No Time to Die has to come out of the cinema. There was that pressure to put it to streaming, to put it on VOD, which is, payment, pay-per-view. But they held out and waited till it could go to the cinema. I think it did affect its box office. It grossed nearly $800 million, but I think older people who would normally go and see Bond maybe didn't go to the pictures to see it. Having said that, it only grossed a little less, about 80 million less than Spectre. It's also the 5th Daniel Craig film, so it was in that situation where grosses do tail off. Peak Craig was those first 3 films, reaching its peak in terms of box office with Skyfall, still the 3rd highest grossing Bond film after inflation, which is quite a remarkable achievement when you consider those Connery films and more films from a pre-video era when you just went to the cinema. So just scratching there. So the other issue here is, Barbara Broccoli's 64, Michael G. Wilson's 82. Kobe Broccoli, his last film he got a credit on was GoldenEye, but pretty much left the Barbara Broccoli to handle that, I think. So Michael G. Wilson's nearing that age. Barbara Broccoli, well known. Is there someone else to steer the ship coming through from the Broccoli organisation enterprise? These, because James Bond's gone on so long, there's always problems for Bond at different points. There was the famous thing with the MGM. I forget what the legal thing was, but after License to Kill, which wasn't a very successful film for a Bond, there was that 6-year gap to GoldenEye. It was a legal dispute. And the only thing you got in that time was like the 1992 kind of 30th anniversary CD tape of Bond, and they really missed that. You could see that 3rd Timothy Dalton film could have come out in 92, and that maybe would have swung it for Timothy Dalton more. They might have got it right. And found the commercial success that I think his Bond deserved. But there's this 6-year gap now. That the weird thing is that seemed like an eternity back then. People now, you get longer gaps between franchises and Bond. You had the 4-year gap from Quantum of Solace to Skyfall, and then you have the 3-year gap to Spectre. And what ended up being like the 6-year gap to No Time to Die. But at that time when Brosnan came back, it was big news. It was like, Brosnan with cast as Bond. I was so excited. I went straight to the pictures. It was a fucking amazing time to be alive with a Bond fan. I've got to tell you that. In the same way when Craig came out and tore the rule book up, Casino Royale was great. But that big gap between films, sometimes it feels like there is paralysis there. In the Bond things, they don't seem to know what to do with stories sometimes, and then you end up with something like Spectre. And sometimes I sort of feel, well, how hard is it to do a James Bond film? Just fucking send him somewhere, have him kicking ass, have him getting off with a woman, But they got tied up tied up in this kind of big story out with Craig. Really, what happened was they're kind of breaking free a little bit with Skyfall, but then I think Sam Mendes really made the fatal decision for me to kind of tie it all up with Spectre, have Blofeld as, Bond's. I never saw him as his brother. Bond spent, his skiing holidays with him when his parents died. He was taken under his wing. He was he wasn't really a brother. But anyway, and then they did the thing to kill James Bond off, which I still think I kind of hold Daniel Craig quite responsible for that. I feel like he had a lot of sway, and I think that was a bad decision at the time. I was like, okay, maybe that suits the Craig thing, but you just don't fucking kill James Bond. And this is trapped it. It's trapped it narratively, because you either have to go right back to the start again, or you ignore the Craig timeline, and then you kind of imagine an actor coming in and are picking up sometime after Die Another Day. And I think that's the source of paralysis. The other thing is which actor to cast. Craig was great, sort of slightly left field casting, but people saw Layer Cake, and I include myself in this, knew when the rumours were circling, he'll be great. Obviously, I know people prefer, Sean and Roger, and, I do as well. I love all that. But Daniel Craig was brilliant. It was a brilliant move. Pierce was a safe move. The names, there's been names bandied around. The two names that turn up, one name that turns up with fans is Henry Cavill. And I can see the wisdom in this is Henry Cavill's about the same age as Pierce Brosnan was when Pierce Brosnan took it over. Basically, you could cast Cavill. You turn out the films quicker. I think Cavill is 42 next year. They'd have to shoot the film next year. The film comes out when he's 43. They do another film when he's 45. Then they do it when he's 48, because I do think they'll probably have to do him every 3 years. I think it's difficult to do him every 2 years now. He could do another film when he's 51. Hell, he could do another film when he's in his late 54, 55. Craig, I think, was 51, 52. You might get away with it. And basically ignore the Craig timeline and just sort of have him picking up like, things got a bit messy in Iceland kind of thing, and you just put him into the timeline continuum that existed with the Brosnan era. Basically, the James Bond original timeline continuum is the idea that although different actors are playing Bond, they're all part of the same thing. So you have references, Roger Moore twice to his wife being murdered. You have that reference to Timothy Dalton. You have Pierce Brosnan, GoldenEye starting in 1986. At the same time, he was supposed to take over from Dalton. And these are all part of that. The other option is you basically don't have him dying at the end of No Time to Die. You possibly reshoot the end scene with CGI, put the new actor in it. Yes, you think he's got blown to smithereens, but he's blown into the water. He's absolutely mangled. He gets picked up, and we have some long credit sequence where he's basically healing somehow. And then you basically continue the Craig timeline, and the new actor plays James Bond. Yes, he has a daughter, but he can't meet her because of the nanobot thing. And then that could be used in the plot later. But the thing is, time passes and people forget. They'll forget all that. So my kind of thing is, let's put him, into the standard timeline. If you cast a younger actor, you're going back. Now, Aaron Taylor-Johnson was the actor recently, and when those rumours came out, there was quite a lot of buzz about that, and that felt like quite real. There's always, Idris Elba's going to be the new Bond. There's this person. It's all fucking crap. Tom Hardy, Idris Elba not going to be Bond. I actually think Idris Elba would be a good M. They're too old, But the Cavill thing holds sway because it would be a safe thing. It'd be like casting Brosnan, I think. Safe pair of hands. But back to Johnson, there was a lot of press about it. I think Aaron Taylor-Johnson is quite private in his private life, and of course he's married to Sam Taylor-Wood, who's a bit older than him, quite a lot older than him. And there's quite a lot of negative things online about that, because they kind of met when he was very young, she's quite a bit older. And I just feel like, from his point of view, there'd be a lot of scrutiny on that if he's James Bond, which is awful for her, it's awful for him and for his family. So maybe there was something in the Aaron Taylor-Johnson thing, but maybe he went, maybe this isn't for me. Or maybe he's agreed to it and they're trying to work out what the fuck to do with this thing. So going back to this content issue with Amazon, we don't want, James Bond at school. We don't want James Bond TV shows. We don't want fucking James Bond spin-offs with like female agents or alternative universes. The world of, universal exports. You can imagine that they do a series, universal exports, a new spy thing. You got this fucking crap spy thing the Russo brothers have done on Amazon. I watched the first episode and it was daft, and that's kind of got different characters in different parts of the world. Just my take. But, what they could do is make James Bond documentaries. So they could do content that's interesting for Bond fans. Timothy Dalton's nearing 80 now. Brosnan's getting on. You could do a big features about their time as Bond. You could interview George Lazenby, he's getting on. These guys, they could pass away soon. Obviously, Daniel's still around, you could do that. You could do a top retrospective of Roger. I mean, there's this Roger Moore documentary coming out. Amazon could have done that. Sean Connery, could be Broccoli. I know these things have been done before, but they could do really, really good stuff. But the problem is a lot of the Bond people from the old Bond have died. The other option is you take the stuff off the Blu-rays where you've got top documentaries making of, you re-edit those and you put those out as content, which would be, I'd watch them again, but also interesting for people who maybe don't have the Blu-rays, and they could get some cool sort of, Man with the Golden Gun, deep analysis or something like that. I'm not sure. And that might satisfy Amazon's, content thing, but keeping James Bond cinematic. But you just know that their thing is to get like things onto their streaming channel. It's changed, cinema. The thing I found strange with the streaming thing is, like, if James Bond film premiered on Amazon, yeah, absolutely, I'm signing up. But that doesn't mean I'm going to keep Amazon. When I get Amazon, I usually get an offer 30 days free, and then we might keep it for another month. I did the same. We did the same with Apple. We did the same with Netflix. We bounce. I do not keep any streaming platforms for a long time. It's too expensive, and I work my way through the content. A lot of content's shit, and I hate calling it content, So when I watch stuff, so sort of having James Bond there isn't going to make me keep my Amazon Prime. The other issue is it's incredibly expensive making these films, incredibly expensive promoting them. There's an argument, did No Time to Die make a profit? It made a lot of money because $250 million, and you've got the marketing costs, and you've got when it was, the COVID lockdown, that would have cost interest on it. So, it might have had a way to go, but people think Bond fans buy the Blu-ray, they do buy those. But again, the streaming thing's killed those ancillary sales for a lot of things. I think the Bond films moving forward will need to get their budgets down. But you just because I think it's hard for them to compete with these franchises that gross a bit over $1 billion, $1.5 billion. Skyfall punched above its weight. Typically, the grosses of Casino Royale, after Inflation, Spectre, No Time to Die, Quantum are more where it's at. Skyfall was like a Goldfinger Thunderball moment. You look at the grosses of the other films, that's the mean average. So you can't be spending crazy money, but Amazon and companies like that maybe aren't as fussed about that. Maybe they just like, right, we're going to spend $200 million. We don't care, we just want content, which is an awful thing, but the world's changing, film's changing. But my feeling is now either this is like a kind of smokescreen. Hey, they're going to announce it for Bond, but maybe we're just obviously it's getting the end of the year. Maybe there isn't going to be an announcement in 2025 for who's going to play fucking James Bond. I don't know. Anyway, that is my sort of take on this news. Remember to share and subscribe, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers.